Hello, everyone. Welcome to Prowess Project Goes Live. Favorite part of the week when we get the opportunity to help the online business managers who are in our community learn to grow their business, start how to be an OBM, get clients, and all in everything in between. And today I'm extremely excited because I've been noticing something in the OBM sphere that we as a whole need to claim our, what's the word I want to use? Claim our power when it comes to working with a CEO or in all the different things that we can bring a CEO. How do we say that without feeling like we're tooting our own horns? And then how do we show that? Because I'm a big fan of show versus tell. Once you get that client, so they realize that you are super strategic and worth your weight in gold and then some. So as always, let's get a question started. Put in chat your answer. For all of you who are listening, quick reminder, I have a 3-year-old. What is your favorite Disney movie? It could be now or as a child. What was your favorite Disney movie? Put into the chat. What was your favorite Disney movie? Mine by far was Little Mermaid as a kid. I absolutely loved it. Absolutely. I haven't gotten my daughter Lottie to watch it yet, but I'm still trying. Fantasia, Corey, that's such a good one. Little Mermaid. Oh, Amy. Love it. Awesome. Okay, y'all. With all of you know me, but here I am, Ashley Connell, CEO and founder of Prowess. What does Prowess do? We help women, men, really anyone who needs a flexible career and wants to focus on operations. We train them to be online business managers. As they're going through a training, we're gathering data on them to help them get clients. Then on the CEO side, we gather data from them, and that's how we use the data to match them up. So the dream CEO finds their dream OBM. All right. So today we are bringing up, without further ado, Gwen Bortner. Gwen. We are so glad to have you back.
I'm so glad to be back. I was so excited when you posted your, what was it, your top 10 most watched. I can't remember what it was, but I was on the list. I was so excited. I was on the list. I loved it.
Yes, I want you to know you are such an inspiration. Like a lot of the times what happens is an OBM wants to start their business or leave corporate. And so they start with being an OBM with the plan to become more of a business strategist like you. So again, huge, huge, huge gratitude for you to share your story and really share your wisdom with our community.
Well, always my goal, anytime I'm on any sort of podcast, conversation, whatever, is to be one of the most watched episodes. We try to do our best to amplify it and make sure other people know about what folks are doing as well. So like I said, I was very excited
You do a
when I
great
saw that.
job.
I love being invited back. So thanks for having me back, Ashley. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Okay, real quick, Gwen, give everyone a reminder. How did you get to where you are today? And then share what your role is and what you do in your day-to-day business.
So my path was a very long and circuitous path, as most people's are, but always ended up in some pocket of business operations that I always kind of naturally landed there in some form or fashion. And it's now been over 40 years. So it is a long, it is a long and winding road that I've been doing this. But part of it was I was in lots of different industries because I did a lot of independent work, independent kinds of consulting, those kind of things. And so that allowed me to see, the back end of lots and lots and lots of businesses at, all different sizes, from, major corporations like Sprint and General Mills down to, very little tiny organizations to very, niche that people don't even know like is a niche kinds of businesses. And so where I landed, just about, it's a little over 10 years ago now, was doing this kind of advising for people to come in and say, hey, let's look and let's see if we're really aligning what you want out of life, what you want out as your definition of success, with the way the business is functioning. And what we find is a lot of times people have created successful businesses, but it's based on some kind of generic definition of success, not necessarily their definition of success. And what we were seeing, especially, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, but we're still seeing it now, is a lot of people were burning down their business. It's like, you don't have to burn it down. We just need to redesign it. And usually that's an operational, kind of thing. But what I also found as part of it, and what we've, since the last time we've talked, that we really uncovered, is what I'm really doing is helping CEOs be held accountable to doing the stuff that they need to do to make the change that they really want to make. Right. And so that's really where my focus is. And I was recently reading a book, and they talked about every business needs a business advisor. And and most people have advisory boards, right? Bigger corporations have boards, right? And what I realized is that's really the role that I provide, because an advisory board has kind of three major functions. One is they have outside perspective. So they aren't someone who's in the business in in any way, shape, or form. So in this case, it's not an OBM. An OBM can provide lots of insight, but they're in the business, right?
That's
the
right.
other is that they have to provide focus, which an OBM can help with, right? And they need to provide accountability to the things that they're supposed to be doing. And that's another place that the OBM can really help as part of it. But that's really the role that I'm providing, is I'm kind of an advisory board of one. And that's how I describe myself. I describe myself as a business advisor. And it's really for these smaller businesses. I work exclusively with women entrepreneurs, but with smaller businesses that generally have less than 20 employees, usually, less than $5 million, somewhere in those ranges, to help them have outside perspective, have the accountability, keep focused on the things they need.
Oh, so many questions for you. So many questions. So what popped out immediately to me is you are this business advisor, which I love that. I said strategist earlier, and I wanted to immediately correct myself. So sorry about that.
No worries.
You are this business advisor. And of the three prongs of that, an OBM helps with two. How does an online business manager step into that power and that confidence and really show the business owner that they are mission critical to the business, not a nice to have? They're not a glorified VA. They are someone who is truly going to align with the strategy of the business and help get shit done.
So I think the first and most important place is in that focus aspect. Okay.
Say more.
Every good entrepreneur, and I know you're one of these good entrepreneurs, has a gazillion ideas. Yes, right? Am I singing a familiar song?
Oh yeah, shaking my head. Yep. Busted.
Right. And sometimes folks come in and they think what they need to do is help provide ideas, and that's not in these upper roles. It's not about providing ideas. It's about sifting through ideas. It's about helping them stay focused on what really is the thing that aligns with where they're wanting to, wherever they're wanting to hit. Doesn't matter whether it's grow, stay the same, shift, scale. I don't care what the goal is, but are these ideas actually sifting down into that thing? And so part of where the OBM really can help is in that focus, to be able to be someone who's saying, hey, I don't know if this is actually keeping us on the path that we want to stay on. Or, hey, did you actually switch paths on purpose and haven't told me yet? Because sometimes we want to switch. It's one of the things I talk to my clients about all the time, is I don't care if you decide to take another path. I just want you to do it with intention. Because sometimes we don't know that we want a different path until we've gotten partway down the path. And it's like, oh, this is not what I thought this was. This is not where I want to be.
Yep.
Right? I thought this was going to the beach, but this is going through the jungle, and I do not want to go through the jungle. Right? So it's like back. We're going to take another
Been
path.
there. Yes.
Right? And that's completely fine, so long as it's done with intention. Not like, ooh, and there's another path over there. We should go check that out. Ooh, and there's another path over there, and let's go check that out. And and so, yeah, see, I know.
So guilty of the latter. Oh my God. Leah's shaking her head.
So, but that really is where the power is for an OBM, is to be identifying when those shifts are happening, and not necessarily directing it, but helping the CEO think through this and say, is this really on the same path, or are you shifting? And are you shifting with intention? Are you just shifting because you heard about it, you got excited about it, somebody said something, it's like, oh my gosh, we can totally do that. The comparison trap, the FOMO, the all of those things that are really easy to fall into, right? So that focus piece to me is a really, really important piece that I would want my OBM to be doing for me as well, right? Is to be able to say, yeah, we're supposed to be doing this, and you just mentioned that, and that feels like a whole nother big thing. Is that what we want to do? And the answer still may be yes, but then also part of the OBM is like, okay, so what are we not doing?
That's it. What are we not
right?
going
Or
to
what
do?
are we postponing? Not necessarily not doing forever, because sometimes it's like, yeah, this has just become less of a priority.
Absolutely. Gosh, I love that. Y'all, I hope you are taking notes with these direct sound bites and putting them on sticky notes, because it is so incredibly valuable. And you are saying it, Gwen, with such confidence, authority, and also care. And so I want you to know that I'm picking up on that too, which I think is really critical when you're having a conversation like this with when an OBM is having a conversation like this with a client.
Yep.
Love it.
Part of the trick of being able to do that, years ago when I hired one of my most trusted advisors now, and she and I had been friends before, but we hadn't worked together.
Yeah.
And it was really early in our relationship, and she was on a call with me, and we got off, and she's like, oh my gosh, you said the most hard things to her. And I'm like, did I? I don't know that and like, what do you mean? What did you hear? And she's like, but she also totally heard it. And in this case, this was a lot of my clients, as they become clients, are people I've had relationship with. This was someone I had no relationship with at all. And she's like, I mean, she's like a complete stranger to you. And it's like, yeah, no, that's true. But what it was as I talked about it, I didn't talk about it being her. I talked about the issue. So it wasn't about her, it was about the issue. And I think that's really where you can say these things with confidence and be directive without it coming out as being accusatory or attacking or any of those things. Because in this example that we were just talking about, to say, this seems like a really interesting idea. I'm concerned that this idea doesn't align with this thing. Can you help me see how this aligns? Right? It's not about, you're being all crazy again. You're getting all distracted, right? Because it's not now about the CEO at all. It's about, hey, this thing. It's about the thing. We can get so much more distance when it's about the thing and not about us.
I love it. Oh gosh, I really, really, really love it. It's about the issue, not about the people. And that, I mean, it's so true. It's very rarely about the people. It's about the issue. It's not personal.
Right. Now, yes, because they're a visionary CEO, this is something that they are doing all the time. But if we start pointing it out from that perspective, then it just becomes like, oh, but it's just my way. It's the way I'm going to be, right? And we can't fight that.
So you literally teed me up to my next question. So as a visionary, and a pretty very much so one, I do. I have a ton of ideas, and keeping me accountable can be tough. And so, what are some best practices to keeping your client accountable while like holding the space for allowing them to have their own creative process?
So the first thing that I think is really important to put out on the table, and this is not going to be a popular statement, so I'll just say that right off the bat, okay? Is everybody says they want to be held accountable until they are.
Yep, I would agree, 100%.
Okay, and there are some people that will be that are willing to be held accountable, because accountability is a two-way street. And so if your CEO, your client that that you're working with as an OBM, actually does not want to be held accountable, there is nothing you can do to hold them accountable,
Hmm.
because it is a back and forth process. You can do your best to guide them to do the things that you need to do, but if they aren't actually willing to be held accountable, they can't be held accountable, because you don't have any levers or control over them.
Right.
You know, there's nothing that you can do, right? And a lot of people get uncomfortable when they're held truly accountable. And I'm going to say truly accountable, because a lot of times people use the term accountable and it means, did you do the thing? That is not accountability. That's just checking boxes, right? Accountability requires a dialogue, a back and forth conversation, a willingness to discuss what's going on and to come up with solutions together. And so
Mm,
that's why, if you're not being willing to be held accountable as the CEO, as the client, there's nothing they can do. There's nothing you can do about that, because they're not participating in their half of the equation. All you can do is continue to kind of raise the thing and do this. So that's the first piece I think it's really important to know, because I think some people get frustrated that they can't hold people accountable because they feel like it's their shortcoming. And
mm,
it's not. Sometimes it is not. And a lot of CEOs don't want to be held accountable.
that's
They
right.
want all of the excuses for when things don't work.
That
It's
is
it's
right.
it's a hard lesson to hear. They want to be able to say, well, it was this and this and this and this and this. No, that's not true. You know that. We're not gonna call them out on it, because that back to that becomes an attack. But it's like, no, we could have made other choices, but you weren't willing to deal with the issues that were actually stopping us from making the progress, from doing the thing, from getting the place that we want to be. And it's one of the ways that I know when I'm working with clients whether or not I have the right client. And it's also why I have no minimum contract with my clients, because they usually self-select out
Huh.
very quickly, because it's extremely uncomfortable for them. It's extremely uncomfortable.
Oh,
And
I can imagine. I'm feeling a little like I'm shifting in my seat right now.
right.
So, yeah. And then I'm like thinking back to all my conversations, and I was like, did I show up with it? Like, did I allow them to hold me accountable? So I'm going through all of that in my head.
Yeah,
Um,
it's an interesting thing. So here's the thing about true accountability: is true accountability first requires a second person. There's, every once in a while people will say, "Oh, I'm very accountable." I'm like, to who? To myself. No, you can't be accountable to yourself. It's not part of the actual definition. Accountability is reporting back and discussing with another person, right?
that's awesome.
So you can't be
Didn't know that.
accountable to yourself. And typically we're used to people, holding people accountable below us, right?
That's
Which
true.
means we usually, within whatever the structure is, right? And so we
That's true.
usually have some sort of lever over those people. But this is why the OBM holding the CEO accountable is really, really hard, because they don't have any levers over them. That's why the CEO has to be willing to be held accountable, because they actually want the process. They want the result, even though it may be hard work. So that's the first piece, is that it's a back and forth about actually talking about the thing, whatever the thing is. And back to, we don't make it about people. We don't make it about, we don't make it about you. We make it about the thing, right? And that becomes the real issue, is to say, so I'm going to make up an example I am sure one of your OBMs has dealt with, probably
like,
more than once.
all like me. Yeah.
Yeah. So scope creep, right? How often
yeah.
do we deal with scope creep kinds of issues? It's a classic, right? So instead of talking about scope creep about what they did, right, and how they're doing a thing, we talk about the actual issue that was where the creep happened. Okay.
Can you give me an example there?
Yeah. So for example, let's say that part of their scope is that they're supposed to, get a thing done, but they first need the CEO to finish a process, right?
Got it.
And so they don't finish their process, and now their work has to be extended out, but they were planning on doing other work this next week because it was supposed to be done, right? Scope creep starts creeping, right? This should have taken a month and now it's taking 2 months, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But it's the CEO not getting their piece done. Our normal response is, why didn't you get that done? That's our, that's kind of our normal response. Okay. That's an attack. No matter how we say it, it comes out as an attack, right? So instead we focus on, so you weren't able to hit the deadline. What prevented you from hitting the deadline? Now it becomes about the activity. And what we can then find out is like, well, because I didn't really know how to do it, or I don't want to do it. Okay, that's still a valid thing. We need to work around that. Us not knowing that they don't want to do it, we're never going to get it solved. If we know that they don't want to do it, it's like, well, I could take a shot at this and just have you look at these two pieces. Would that work? Yes, that would work. Great. We could, so this is the accountability piece of holding up the mirror and not saying, why didn't you do it? Because that's when we get defensive. And it's like, oh, I had a whole lot of things on my plate and it just didn't happen. Well, that's not it. That's not a useful answer. What prevented you from doing this? Well, this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened. Is there any way that we know that that's not going to happen next week too?
Yeah.
Right? Changes the conversation instead of, oh, it's just one of these things. And so it's looking at the question about the thing and how do we fix it, as opposed to, why didn't you do it? You're in trouble.
That is so good. We're getting a lot of questions in the chat, which I love. This one, Amy, okay, so Gwen and I are on the same wavelength, and now me and you are on the same wavelength, also because of Little Mermaid, because I had this exact same thought. How can we know if a CEO is able to be held accountable before we take them on as a client, or can we?
You can't. You almost never can. Sometimes if you've been doing it long enough, you can get a feel for it. Like, you can really start using your intuition and your instinct. Almost every time now, if I have a client that doesn't stay, I had a feeling that they probably wouldn't, because I had a feeling, it's like, you say you want to be held accountable, you're saying all the things, but I don't think you're really going to want to be held accountable to this. So but it's part, for me, it's 40 laps around the sun of working in the business, right? So part of it is time.
Yeah.
Right? It's just experience.
Do you think that one of the reasons is because accountability and being held accountable is so murky? And
I think part of it is murky, but I think part of it is that it's rarely done well, and a lot of things are described as accountability that aren't accountability.
Can you give me an example of something like that?
Yeah, well, there's so many group programs that I've come across, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, we hold you accountable." And when you actually find out what they're doing, they're just asking you, "So you said you were going to do ABC, did you do it?" "No." "Okay, well, next week you need to do it." That's not accountability. That's just checking a box, right? Or they're saying you need to do ABC without actually understanding how that's fitting into your world at all. And when you don't do it, it's like, "Oh, well, you're not accountable to getting things done." Well, maybe I'm getting accountable to doing things that are way more important,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
But those are held out as accountability, and that's just task checking,
right, right.
right? It's
I
not a
absolutely see
real
that.
interaction back and forth and saying, "I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm proposing a solution." We're going back and forth to try and get to a future space, as opposed to do this or don't do this. I did or I didn't.
So I, I completely understand. And I like that distinction a lot. So I'm imagining if an OBM was going to start working with me and we were having the accountability conversation, because we're always going to, like, a kickoff conversation of like, how do you like to be communicated with, blah, 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 blah. And I'm hiring this person to keep me on trains on the tracks, right?
Mhm.
Is it valuable to ask the CEO, how do you like to be held accountable? Or to give them this example that you're describing as how you, as the OBM, bring accountability and act that out in the CEO's business. Does that make sense what I'm
I
saying?
Yeah, I think I think both can be right answers, and maybe both together are the best answer. So one really, I think, is asking, how do they want to be held accountable? And often what they'll say basically is, "I want you to hound me." Well,
That
that's
is right.
right. I mean,
Yeah,
that's not what they say, but that's what they say. "I want you to hound me. I
that's
want
right.
you to bug me until I get it done." Well, that's not really good use of time for you or them,
Right.
right? And so you can say, "Well, that's just a task rabbit. That's just someone chasing after you for tasks. And that's not real accountability. That's just hassling you. And I'm not sure that's the best use of my time. And it's probably not the best use of the best use of yours, right?" But because that's what so many people have associated with accountability, that becomes part of the issue, right?
Mm.
Is they're associating that's what I need. I need someone just to chase after me. Where I always want to talk about, no, we want you to understand what it is so that you can work most effectively in your business and on your business. And that takes dialogue. That takes a process, right? Because if I'm chasing, I'm just going to make up something. If I'm chasing after you to get a post done, but you really, really, really hate writing, this is a silly thing for me to have to chase after you every week. What we need to get to is, I really hate writing these. What I'd really like to be able to do is give out, 16 different concepts and have someone else write them. Okay, well, let's figure out how do we do that.
Oh, I really like this a lot, because not only does it allow, as an online business manager, to show your emotional intelligence, but it also shows your immediate problem solving too. And I,
Right.
I just love that together. That's a really, really good way of going about it. Man. Okay.
And part of it then is also taking your ongoing conversations and stringing them together to find, this is where an OBM being in the business can probably diagnose things faster than someone like myself, who's a little more outside the business. Of, I'm seeing repeated behaviors. Let's see what that actually is meaning, and let's talk about that behavior.
Mm,
Not exactly the same thing, but the
right.
core behavior is the same, right? It's like, okay, so let's talk about why that's happening,
That makes so much
and how
sense.
how do we fix that? So when I'm bringing on clients, I have an accountability process that I've developed over the years. That's an asynchronous, does not take very much time. It's a fairly straightforward process. Most of the clients that I work with, it takes them 15 to 20 minutes a week, so it's not a big deal, but it really moves the needle for them, right?
Sure.
And so I tell them what this process is, and I say, whether you're coming in at our lowest level service or our most high level service, everyone goes through it. It is required of everyone, because it's how we're going to move the needle, because the accountability really is how we're going to move the needle.
Oh man, God, that is so true. Do you have any tips? This is shifting a bit from the accountability, but on helping OBMs shift from task management to being strategic and being that right hand for their clients.
So I think I'm going to tell you, it's a tough line to sit in between those two. One of my closest advisors in my business was living in both spaces, and what we found was, although she could do well, I mean, she can excel at either of them. When she's doing both of them, she's only doing them not quite as well, because it's a very different mindset process to be truly strategic as opposed to getting things done. And so understanding that you really need to make a conscious shift from one to the other is really important. And what my person found, because we're able to talk about all of these things because of the type of work that I do. And it was one of the things she said, I didn't realize that this was an issue until you and I were working together. And she said, what I realized is that when I'm doing the task, because I'm also strategic, is I keep rethinking about, is this the best way to be doing the task based on the strategy? And she said, but the other side is, when I'm being strategic, I'm spending too much time thinking about how the task is getting done, because she wasn't splitting the time. It was just the time.
That is a really good call out. One thing that we look for in OBMs and test for in our algorithm is the ability to be able to do both in some capacity. And I do hear sometimes when I talk to people who already have an OBM and aren't working with a prowess OBM, that they feel like their OBM falls into like task manager too often. But what you just said is such a great distinction, or something that they could try, is really two different hats.
Right.
I am in task
really
mode, I am in strategy mode.
Yeah, this is a strategy. This is a strategy time. Once I know what we're implementing, then I can put on my implementation hat, but I don't get to question what I did during the implementation. Because if I was handing it off to an implementer only person, they wouldn't be questioning it.
That's true.
They would just be doing the thing.
This is really great. Does anyone else have any more questions? I have plenty, but all right. So this is something that we always ask our guests now. OBMs want to work with people like you, who are successful, visionary. You are a special sort, where you're visionary and like you can really get.
I'm more operator than visionary. Yeah.
Okay. Well.
Yeah. I'm way more operator than visionary, but it's I am always the weirdo in the entrepreneurial room, for sure.
Oh my God, Gwen, I love it. But they always want to work with people like you and businesses like yours. And so can you give us a peek behind the curtains of some challenges that you are working through in your business right now?
Oh yeah, sure. One of the things that we deal with and are dealing with, and part of it was bringing in a really good implementer to do this, is getting our own SOPs in place. Now, we've
Mm.
been really good about following the processes very well, but they weren't always documented well.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, because my nature, because really fundamentally I'm an operator, you know, I very quickly figured out what is the process I wanted to do, and we did it consistently, which is always what I talk about with with SOPs. People are like, oh my gosh, we need SOPs, and it's like, you don't need SOPs until you're doing things consistently and you know what's actually working, right? And so we had someone on the team earlier who was great, um, and was doing the processes fairly consistently, but they weren't documented. And she needed to leave with a fairly, she kind of had a family emergency sort of situation. And when we had to bring someone else in who was actually had been also working with us, but not in that capacity, we realized how many holes were there,
Mm.
right? Of not being able to you know, actually transfer the information to do it. I'll say, I mean, like we were able to transfer the information because we did do it consistently. We knew what we were doing, but we had to do it the hard way. We had to
Right.
have the conversation. We had to talk through it. We had to try something. Oh, no, that's not really what that meant. What we really meant was, so on and so forth. So that's one of the things that we have been working through. And there's enough going on. I've been around long enough that this is taking a while to get through all of these. We're getting close. We're starting to wrap up. But of course, the other thing is there's some new things happening, and so that means whole new whole new set, right?
That's right.
And one of the challenges that we have, quite honestly, with our business is we provide a very white glove service. Every person that we deal with has almost always has some little amount of customization.
Hmm.
And I do that on purpose. I do not recommend that. I don't think that's necessarily the best answer, but there's reasons for my business model that makes sense. But that also is really hard to document.
Yeah.
Like, how do
Yeah.
we know what's consistent, and where do we know that we have to ask a question to get the additional information, right? To do the different thing, this time. And so that's one of the things that we've been working through, is to figure out how do we do that in a way that allows us to still be as white glove as we want, but to have it systematized enough to not make everybody insane all the time, because
That's
no one actually knows what they're doing.
so SOPs. I think they're funny because there's like two different camps. I fall on one very
Okay, well, let's see if
drastically.
I fall on your side or the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. I so one camp is document the 20% that gets you 80% of the way there. The other is document every detail and constantly update it. What camp are you?
I am in the first camp.
Okay.
I'm in the first camp, because the second camp is really, really hard to maintain, and it doesn't take very long until it's broken. So, and my version is a little bit different than the way you described it, but it's close. Which is, the first thing is document the things that you need to document, but also don't duplicate information anywhere.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, so for instance, I'll give you for
Yeah.
instance in our business, right? We use Asana as our task project management tool, right? Doesn't matter what the tool is, but that's what we use. So in some of the documentation that talks about the why, because I think that's really important in the documentation, is like, why are we doing this and why is it important, and why are we doing it this way, right? But then as we start talking about the how to do it,
Yeah.
the piece parts of it, there will be places where it's like, um, you need to duplicate this template, and then there is a link to the template, and in the template it tells you all the steps that you need to do for duplicating the template and whatnot, instead of here's the template and here's how you duplicate it, so that because what happens is one gets updated and the other doesn't, and now we have conflicting information. So my whole thing is make sure that nothing, as much as possible, is ever repeated, that it's only in one place. So the parts that are the Asana part only live in Asana. And it may say that and then go back to the SOP to get to
Yeah,
the next
right.
thing that you have to do, right?
Oh,
So
I like
that
that.
you're staying in one place. But I also am a big fan of, if you have to write down absolutely every single solitary detail, you probably don't have the right person, unless it's a very, very low level task where you're bringing someone in that you assume really knows nothing,
Yeah,
right? Like, I don't tell people how to use Asana in any of my SOPs, because if you're coming in for this, you need to, that's going to be one of the requirements. So you already know how to use Asana.
totally. That makes sense. We do have a question. I'm interested in how you describe this as a service. I'm not exactly sure what this is, Rhea.
It,
Or
it might be the
are you
accountability piece. Yeah.
okay? Okay. Let's just say it's the accountability. How do you describe that?
I talk about it as accountability, to say part of my role is to hold you accountable. And when I say accountable, I'm not chasing you down to do things. We're figuring out if you're doing things, and if you aren't, what the reason is behind them, so that we can actually work toward a solution. And so I explain how I define true accountability. That
Right.
accountability is a back and forth process. It's me mirroring. It's doing these things, and that by doing so, that is how they're going to be able to move their own needle.
I love it. I love it. And she clarified that she was asking, how do you describe the strategy versus implementation piece?
So the to me, the strategy is always the harder piece to describe. And what I find is, back to, at an OBM level, the strategic piece really is about helping them focus, because most of them don't actually need that much help in strategy. It's part of kind of the nature of being an entrepreneur, is they are typically very strategic. So the strategy piece is making sure that you're clear on the strategy, and that by being clear on it, you're helping them focus. And so when I think about bringing in an OBM for a client, what I'm really hoping that they're going to do is be helping them focus on what are the activities they need to be doing to implement the strategy, as opposed to helping them think through strategy, because most of the time that's not what they need.
Yep.
They've got strategy. It's kind of like, do they need more ideas? They don't actually need more ideas. They need someone to help them filter through that. And to me, the focus piece is the strategic piece.
Man, Gwen, I very rarely stop one of these and like take notes, but I did because this was like gem after gem after gem after gem. Okay, we are 1 minute left. If there was one thing that you could leave all of our online business managers with to help them either in their career, holding their clients accountable, what have you, what would it be?
Um, their most important role is focus. Their most important role is helping them focus, and doing it in a way that feels supportive, as opposed to, accusatory or aggressive, or
Yeah.
any of those things. It's a way to say, we want you to be successful. Let me help you focus.
Gwen. Ah, so good. I love it. Everyone, thank you for being here this week for another just top hit. I know for 2025, you're going to be a top 10 as well. So, yeah, girl. Yes. Oh,
Love
so
it.
good. And I am excited to share with everyone that this time next week, we are holding a special live where Leah and I are going through the top 4 ways to help your OBM business grow. So
Oh, I love
lots of
that.
really good stuff. Yes, lots of really good stuff. A bonus if you show up live, you'll be hearing more about this. Gwen, thank you, thank you, thank you. And
Always a
real
pleasure.
quick, where can everyone find you?
They can find me at everydayeffectiveness.com. And my CMO and I have a podcast called The Business You Really Want. And you can find that at thebusinessyoureallywant.com.
Love it. Awesome. Okay. Link is in the comments. We'll put it in the show notes. Thank you, everyone, and see you same time next week.